So this reading begins with, now the birth of Jesus the Messiah took place in this way. When his mother Mary had been engaged to Joseph, but before they lived together, she was found to be with child from the Holy Spirit. Her husband Joseph, being a righteous man, was unwilling to expose her to public disgrace and planned to dismiss her quietly. Now, it's important for us to recognize that our modern day understanding of being engaged and marriage do not apply to Mary and Joseph. Back in Joseph's day, being engaged was contractual. It was usually arranged by the fathers of the bride and the groom-to-be. It was a legal contract and a pledge of marriage. And during the time of the engagement, the bride stayed at her father's house. The actual wedding would take place later. Then after the wedding ceremony, the groom takes the bride home to live in his household. And even though a woman remains in her father's house during the engagement, for all practical purposes, the couple is fully committed to each other at the time of their engagement. This story about Joseph takes place in between the engagement and the wedding. Mary and Joseph are living in different households. They had not known each other intimately, and so when Joseph finds out that Mary is pregnant, he draws the same conclusion that any of us would draw. Mary had been unfaithful. Some other man was the father of the baby she was expecting. Now we know, because we'd already been told, that the Holy Spirit was the person. The Holy Spirit is where the baby came from. But Joseph doesn't know that. According to the law of the time, she would have been considered an adulterer. What other conclusion would Joseph come to, given the circumstances that are known to him at this point in the story? I mean, think about that for a minute. How would you feel if you were Joseph? At the very least, I would imagine that Joseph is feeling betrayed, disappointed. Imagine being faced with trying to make a choice about what would happen to this person who has betrayed you. Not to mention the public scandal and judgment that certainly would follow any decision that he would make. And Joseph is feeling the pressures and expectations of the world, of the people in his community. From his perspective at this point, he has two choices. He can publicly accuse Mary, which would most likely result in her being stoned to death, or divorce her. So when it says dismiss her, that's to divorce her. So at this point, Joseph's decision is that he is going to dismiss her quietly and spare her from death by stoning, but the reality is that she would be left disgraced and abandoned. As a righteous man, the law and culture of the day would have made it clear that Joseph's only acceptable alternative was to divorce Mary. Now, Matthew doesn't tell us explicitly how Joseph came to his decision about divorcing Mary, but he does tell us that he is a righteous man. And so I got thinking, what exactly does it mean to be a righteous man? What does this tell us about Joseph? He's living according to the law. He's following the laws. He's virtuous. He would be a moral man, honest. He would be upright. He would be honorable. And developing those kind of character traits does not happen without effort. And I would guess that Joseph, over the course of his life, had been forced to make some difficult decisions along the way to being called righteous. I mean, let's face it, Joseph, he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. We all know what that feels like. This is the stuff of ordinary life. There's confusion and doubt and question and fear, just like anyone who finds themselves cornered by circumstances that are out of their control. We all know that gnawing feeling you get in the pit of your stomach when the choices that we can think of are difficult, and no matter what we do, someone is going to be hurt. The sense of dread that comes when there's no clear way forward. No matter what you do, there are obstacles blocking your way. That's where Joseph is. He's feeling society's expectations weighing on him. Mary's expecting a baby, and now Joseph's expectation to be married and begin a family, that seems totally out of reach. He's faced with a difficult decision, and he considers what his options are, and he makes the decision to dismiss Mary. But God had other plans. An angel of the Lord appears to Joseph in a dream, bringing a message from God. And this message is that he should not be afraid to take Mary as his wife. He reveals that the child was conceived by the Holy Spirit. And the angel tells Joseph, you're to name the baby Jesus. Now, Joseph has another decision to make. Listen to God's message or do what seems right according to the law and the world's expectations. Joseph doesn't ask any questions, offer any objections. He responds without hesitation to God's call. He takes Mary as his wife and names the baby Jesus as he was instructed in the dream. So what has changed? The law hasn't changed. The fact that there was going to be public scandal and judgment by those in the family and the community would not have changed. I mean, really, can't you just hear this conversation? Hey, you know that kid Joseph, the one starting the carpentry business down the road? Well, his betrothed Mary got pregnant before they were married, but the fool's going to take her as his wife anyway. I guess he's not as righteous as we all thought. He's finished in this town. By following God's call, Joseph would have been seen as being disobedient to the law. Joseph hears God's call and acts on it, even though it contradicts what society deems as acceptable. Sometimes the unexpected, unconventional things can be wonderful signs that God is at work. And those same unexpected, unconventional things can put us at odds with the accepted worldview of the day. The reality of Joseph's situation is that God is the one who is at work. The advent of the birth of Christ is the work of God. Joseph shows us his humanness. Joseph can't imagine how anything good can come of his situation. That is right up until God sends an angel with a message. Joseph is awakened to something that is beyond him, beyond his ability, beyond his wildest imagination. Joseph is an ordinary person trying to live his life as best he can. I mean, let's face it, we are all ordinary people trying the best that we can. And the miraculous thing is that God comes to us through ordinary people in our ordinary lives. Not only do ordinary people bring God to us, we also bear God to others. We are ordinary people, accepted and loved fiercely by God. So we prepare. We wait with great expectation, knowing that God comes to each of us through ordinary people every single day. Now, how do we know this to be true? Because God comes to us through something as ordinary as the birth of a baby who will be called Jesus and will be called Emmanuel. God is with us.